Last chance, Samir. Confess. Now!
Yes.
Yes.
I leaked the route. And I'd do it again.
Night, dust, and the smell of gunpowder. I'm leading 7 through a shattered market. The ambush is hitting with surgical precision. Someone among ours is feeding the enemy, and the next shot could land between our shoulder blades. After listening, please subscribe, hit like, and leave a comment before we continue. I ducked as a burst of gunfire shredded the night. Tracers hissed over my head, chipping clay from a half-collapsed mud wall that barely counted as cover. "Move!" I yelled, waving the civilians forward, urging them down the alley. My heart hammered while I pressed my back to the wall. The plan had been a quiet in and out under cover of darkness, but the dark had just exploded into chaos. We had made it only about 200 meters from the hide when the first shots rang out. Now adrenaline flooded my veins as I leaned to peek past the corner. In the green wash of my night vision, I picked out at least 5 Taliban spreading across the road ahead. Their muzzle flashes split the night. The air stank of burned propellant. "Bravo, lay fire on the left flank," Sergeant Baker's voice crackled in my radio. A beat later came the familiar thump-thump of suppressed rifles, and one attacker dropped, writhing and clutching his chest. Someone groaned softly behind me. I glanced back. Our evacuees, a cluster of frightened silhouettes, were crouched low, pressed to the dirt. There were 7 of them, men, women, even a child clutching his mother's hand. They were the reason we were this deep on hostile ground, and the enemy clearly knew it. "Captain, they're swinging right," Lieutenant Ramirez whispered from my left. Sure enough, 2 shadows peeled off from the main group, sprinting to a pile of rubble to our right, trying to wrap around us. Not tonight. I seated the rifle stock into my shoulder, exhaled, and double-tapped. Pop, pop. A figure staggered and fell. Ramirez cut down the second with a short burst before he reached cover. Silence fell for a moment. My ears rang. Had we dropped them all? The sudden pause felt deafening after the roar of the fight. Dust hung in the air, caught by our laser illuminators as they combed the dark for movement. "Baker, you clear?" I hissed into the mic. "Clear for now," Baker answered after a second, but he didn't sound convinced. I signaled us forward, touching Ramirez and pointing down the alley. We had to get out before more enemies showed up. Every extra second in this kill zone shaved off our odds of living. We quickly bunched the civilians and pushed them on. An older man limped, a younger one supported him. I jogged over to help, taking some of the old man's weight. He looked up at me, fear and gratitude frozen in his eyes. "Shukriya, thank you," he whispered in broken English. I gave the slightest nod. "We'll make it," I promised, though I wasn't sure myself. We hurried through a maze of dark alleys. I ran the mental roster, all civilians accounted for, all 6 of my shooters still up. One small miracle, no one on our side killed in that ambush. But a question gnawed at me. How had the Taliban known our route, our step-off time? The operation had been planned down to thread counts. We were OS Special Operations Detachment tasked with a non-combatant evacuation, NEO, pulling these civilians from behind the lines. Civilians like Layla, a young interpreter who had risked her life to help us, and now needed us to return the favor. Like her family and the others, condemned by the Taliban for helping Americans. We trained for missions like this, and still, something had gone wrong. We took another corner, and I motioned a halt. Ahead lay the ruins of the old bazaar, an open stretch drenched in moonlight, which made it deadly. I scanned the darkness carefully. Nothing moved. Our route crossed that space to the extraction point where a helicopter was supposed to be waiting, but after that ambush, I was no longer sure the plan held. "Baker, you have base? Is the exfil still per plan?" I asked quietly. After a pause, Baker replied, "Raptor, this is Dagger 2. Primary landing zone is hot. Orders are to shift to the alternate extraction point at coordinates 7412. Over." Damn. The main site was compromised odds where the enemy was lying in wait. We would have to hoof it to the alternate pickup, a dry riverbed about 2 kilometers east. That meant more ground on foot, with the enemy now keyed up. I moved forward slowly, peering through my night optic. The bazaar looked empty. Overturned stalls, shadows stretched like black sheets. I signaled the group to sprint across one by one. We dashed, crouched low, over the moonlit open. The skin on my neck prickled. I expected gunfire at any second, but it didn't come. Only the distant rumble of explosions on the horizon, the constant soundtrack of an endless war shook the night. On the far side, among a cluster of clay huts, we paused to catch breath. The civilians trembled. A few cried softly with relief. One man, his name seemed to be Samir, whispered to soothe the old man, and the small boy pressed against him. Layla stayed behind them, arms around an elderly woman who was quietly sobbing. I stepped to Layla. "You okay?" I asked softly. Even in the dark, I saw how pale she was with fear. A streak of dust or soot ran along her cheek. She met my eyes and gave a tiny nod, still breathing hard. "I'm fine," she managed. That wasn't true, none of us were fine, but hearing her voice steadied me. Layla and I had worked together for months, gathering on Taliban movements. I'd seen her steady under fire, seen a defiant grin in the face of danger. Now she was close to breaking, but holding on for her family, for the others. Maybe for me. The thought flashed uninvited. "Captain, look!" came a voice nearby. Corporal Davis, our radio man, had been sweeping the ground and found something. He held it out, a cell phone with a cracked body. "Picked this up back in the alley. Someone dropped it during the firefight." I frowned and took it. A plain Nokia, a cheap throwaway. The screen was busted, but the power light still glowed faintly. "Whose is this?" I asked, looking around. The civilians shifted, trading scared glances. Samir stepped forward, scowling. "It is mine. I must have dropped it," he stammered. My grip tightened. We had given clear orders for every evacuee to surrender phones and electronics before their signals could be tracked, or a ring at the wrong time could burn us. They knew that. "Why do you still have it?" I asked, low but firm. Samir swallowed, eyes skittering. "I kept it only for family pictures." "Please, sir, it was turned off, I swear." Baker took a step in, pinning him with a stare. "Turned off? Then how did those butchers know exactly when and where to hit us?" he snapped. "Baker," I warned gently, telling him with my eyes to ease up. I could see where this was going. Suspicion is poison we couldn't afford without proof. And still, he had a right to ask. Samir raised his hands in a warding gesture. "I do not know. I called no one. No one. I would never." His voice shook fear or guilt, hard to tell. I glanced at Layla. She bit her lip and gave the faintest shake of her head. She was as thrown as I was. I turned back to Samir, rolling the phone in my hand. Dirt filmed the case, likely from the alley fall. If he hadn't used it, maybe it was a fluke. But if he had, my gut said trouble. The attack gnawed at me like a rusty shard lodged under skin. Our route had been classified, set only hours earlier in a closed briefing. Either the Taliban had incredible luck or someone had tipped them. If there was a tip, it came from inside our bubble. I studied each of our charges. Layla, I'd trust her with my life. She had saved our team more than once with her intel. Her eyes, scared but steady, looked straight at me. Her father gripped his daughter's hand with desperate resolve. The elderly mother beside them trembled and sobbed. Samir stood apart, wringing his hands. By his foot, a wide-eyed little boy stared at me. He could feel the charge of distrust in the air. A bit behind the boy stood another woman, younger, likely Samir's wife. She looked petrified, tears never drying on her face, hugging the boy so tight, it seemed she feared letting go. I caught Baker's eye and gave a tiny shake of my head. Stand down for now. We couldn't run an interrogation in the dark with Taliban nearby. We'll come back to this, I told Samir quietly, slipping the phone into my vest pocket. Right now, everyone's life depends on you doing exactly what I say and doing it quietly. Understood? Samir nodded fast. Yes, of course. I drew everyone in tight. We needed to move, but first a quick check of ammo and wounds. Ramirez reported a scrape on his arm, nothing serious. One civilian, the older woman, had a shallow cut on her forehead, likely from a fragment or a stone. Layla wiped the blood with a handkerchief, and that was that. What worried me most was their shaking exhaustion. We had been running and fighting all night, and it showed. The boy sobbed softly. His mother tried to hush him, barely holding back her own tears. A dull thump sounded in the distance, then the rising whistle. "Mortar, down!" I shouted. Years of combat had my body moving before my brain. I threw the old man to the ground and covered him as everyone else flattened out. The blast slammed the night a heartbeat later, just behind the huts. Clods and shrapnel rattled our cover. The boy wailed, high and thin. They were dropping mortars on us. Cold dread slid through me. Mortars meant the enemy wanted to pin us in place, likely until reinforcements arrived. How the hell were they tracking us this precisely? We were on our feet, moving erratically unless a drone was on us, or, that thought again, unless someone was steering them from inside. Baker crawled up, face caked with dust and sweat. "They're walking rounds onto us, Captain. If we stay, we're done," he hissed. He was right. The next rounds would land closer. We had to move, barrage or not. I lurched up. "Everyone up! Out of here now! Spread out and rally by that tree line to the east." I pointed toward a dark smudge of trees about 300 meters away, just visible in my night optic. Our alternate pickup lay that direction. If we made the brush, maybe we'd slip their eyes. No one argued. We hauled the civilians and spilled out from between the huts, breaking into small clumps. Another round slapped down right behind us as we cleared the village, a column of fire and dirt punching the air. Then it blurred into a terrified sprint. I remember shards, harsh breathing, muscles on fire, me piggybacking Layla's father at intervals. Baker and Ramirez nearly carried the old woman. Layla ran beside her parents, helping as she could. The little boy's mother bore him in her arms, gasping, while Samir somehow kept pace, steadying his wife. Over the rushing in my ears, I heard Baker cursing under his breath. I knew why we both knew how orchestrated this felt. Mortarmen don't bracket this tightly without precise coordinates, and those coordinates can come only from someone traveling with us. We zigzagged. Another thump, this one fell left and behind. The enemy had lost our line or was firing blind. A stroke of luck. We hit the first sparse trees, thorn scrub, and scattered acacia on a rise. The mortars stopped. Likely the shooters feared hitting their own if assault teams were closing. I tucked everyone into a shallow draw between the trees, a dry runnel like a gutter in the earth. "Here, get low," I ordered. Heads down. With everyone tucked in, I got on the net. "Dagger, actual copy," I whispered, calling higher. Only hiss at first, then a crackle. "Copy, Dagger 1, Overlord on the line," came at last. "Contact with enemy, engaged by multiple elements. Our route is likely compromised. Request movement data on hostile forces nearby and any air support. We are moving to the alternate extraction. Time on station unknown, over." A pause, no doubt. They were checking drone and satellite feeds. Then the voice returned. "Dagger 1, Overlord. Recon shows numerous heat signatures tracking your path about 500 meters behind and closing. Estimate a dozen fighters. No air on station over your grid, sorry. Nearest quick reaction force is 40 minutes out. You need to either break contact or hold until pickup, over." I swore through my teeth. "Roger, Overlord. We'll punch through. Out." I looked at my team. They'd heard it on the internal net. A dozen armed men on our tail, and likely more on alert. Ramirez crawled closer. "Sir, we won't outrun them with civilians. We either hide or we fight," he whispered. He was right. The civilians were barely standing. Some were hurt. The boy sobbed. His mother tried to soothe him. He had seen too much for one night. My mind spun options. We could try to hide and let them pass, but with a crying child and panicked people, that was fantasy. That left one choice: dig in here in the trees and meet them to even the odds, even if they had numbers. Hold until, God willing, the helicopter arrived. "All right, I said quietly on squad net. We set in here. Ramirez, mines on our back trail. He nodded and slid off to emplace a pair of directional charges along the path we'd used. Baker, take that tree with the night glass when they show. Drop them as they file in. Davis, see if you can calm the kid. Davis, a father of two back home, bent to the terrified boy and pulled something from his pocket, a small American flag patch. He set it in the boy's palm with a smile and whispered. Amazingly, the boy stopped sobbing and stared at the little cloth. I posted the rest to cover likely approaches. Layla stayed curled around her parents and the other civilians at the center of our hasty perimeter. I noticed Samir fidgeting at the edge of the group, glancing at us and then into the trees. His face showed more than fear. Anyone would be scared after a chase and a barrage, but something in his manner bothered me. Just fear, or something else. I crawled to him. He flinched when I touched his shoulder. Lie flat and stay down. We've got this, I said. He bobbed his head. I can help if you give me a gun, he whispered. I scowled. Arm an unvetted civilian now? The same man already under a cloud? Not a chance. Just stay down, I muttered. Samir swallowed the slight and eased back, as if to hide. A soft moan drew our eyes Samir's wife. She lay on her side, breathing hard. She's hit, Layla hissed. In the chaos, I'd missed her wound. A dark stain spread on her dress at the abdomen, maybe a mortar fragment or a bullet had nicked her as we ran. Medic, I snapped. Our corpsman, Specialist Torres, slid to her with his kit and started working. Samir collapsed beside his wife, hand over his mouth, barely holding back sobs. Their son clung to his mother's arm, eyes huge and wet. Torres looked up, face tight. Fragment to the belly. I can stabilize, but she needs a surgeon, he said low. Her eyes were hazy with pain. She clenched Samir's hand and whispered in her language. He shook all over. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, Samir kept repeating, tears streaking his face. I forced myself back to the fight. We could do nothing more here than slow the bleeding and pray for fast extraction. One more innocent paying the price for this damned war. Anger boiled up at the enemy chasing us and at whoever had set us up. If we had ghosted out clean, this woman might not be lying in the dirt in front of her child. Torres wrapped the wound tight while she groaned through gritted teeth. Layla held her hand, whispering comfort in her tongue. The fighters were almost on us. I shoved the remaining civilians behind a downed trunk we were using as a berm and told Layla and the others to keep as low as possible. I took a stump on the line, planted the stalk, and leveled my breathing. Through the night optic, I caught shapes slipping between trunks about 100 meters out, prowling, alert. I counted at least 8, likely more behind. They thought they were sneaking up, hoping to catch us fleeing or cowering. Instead, a trap waited. I clicked my radio twice, the signal that I had eyes on and was about to start. They crept closer, rifles up. I held until the lead man came inside 30 meters. Then I whistled sharply and squeezed the clacker. The night tore open with a thunderous ba-boom, a claymore going off. Screams burst from the enemy line as the front ranks were shredded by steel. Baker opened from the tree, his first round punching an awestruck fighter standing in the blast haze. Contact front, I shouted, raking rounds across figures scattering for cover. Chaos flooded the grove muzzles, flared everywhere, bullets chewed bark and spit dirt. A cry one of ours got nicked. Torres yelped and rolled, clutching his thigh. Ramirez and I answered with aimed fire. I dropped one who rushed forward recklessly. Ramirez hosed down another trying to flank left. The rest hugged dirt and sprayed blind, then began to fall back into the dark. We let them go. The first assault was repelled, but they would not quit so easily. Baker jumped down from the tree and dragged Torres back behind cover. Just a scratch, Torres rasped. Though blood was pouring through the fingers, he clamped over the wound. Baker cinched a tourniquet high on his leg. The civilians huddled together. The boy started wailing again despite his mother's efforts to calm him. Poor kid had just seen a slaughter, and his mother was wounded. I swapped mags fast, adrenaline buzzing in every cell. The enemy clearly hadn't expected this fierce a pushback. Now they'd be cautious, maybe try to flank us or call for support. But the clock was against us. A muffled groan made me turn. Samir was on his knees beside his wife. She lay still, eyes closed. He shook her shoulder, then pressed his ear to her chest. His shoulders sagged. She was not breathing. A raw, animal sound tore out of him. "No, Zarak," he howled, swaying as he hugged his wife's lifeless body. The boy, realizing what had happened, screamed for his mother. I was beside him in an instant, clamping my palm over Samir's mouth. "Quiet, you want to give us away?" I hissed. His eyes blazed with grief and rage, but he screwed them shut and forced the sobs down. I took my hand away, and he rasped, bitter and low. "This is because of you. It's your fault. You made us run. I grabbed his collar. "My fault. They shot her, and whoever gave them our position." The words came out harder than they should have, but I was done holding it in. Something flickered across Samir's face, maybe guilt, but it was gone in a heartbeat, replaced by confusion and denial. He looked away. A hand tugged me back Layla's. "John," she whispered, using my name for the first time. It snapped me back. "Let him grieve. The enemy will be back soon." She was right. I let go. Samir collapsed over his wife, shaking in silent sobs. Layla looked straight into my eyes, quiet and intent. "John, do you really think someone betrayed us?" I scanned our people. Baker bandaging Torres, Ramirez watching our rear, Davis trying to comfort the boy, who had broken down again. No one was listening. I gave the smallest nod and whispered, "It's possible. The enemy keeps beating us to the punch. That doesn't just happen." Her face darkened. "You suspect someone on our side." Even saying the word betrayal hurt in her voice. I kept my tone low. "I don't want to, but the evidence..." I tapped the phone in my pocket. Layla closed her eyes for a second. "I understand." "I do not suspect you," I added, almost voiceless. "Not ever." She looked at me. Gratitude and relief glinted there. "We'll get out. We'll sort it out later." "Yeah," I said. Davis crawled over, leaving the boy with Layla's parents for a moment. "Captain, the kid, he won't stop. I don't know what to do." Panic edged his eyes, a good soldier rattled by an impossible task. Quiet a child in a firefight. We couldn't afford the noise. I strained to listen where the Taliban regrouping, but the boy's sobs drowned everything. Baker swore. "More company. Other side this time," he reported, peeking through his optic. Cold washed through me. The enemy was trying to flank or encircle us, as expected. One more push might break us, our medic wounded, a panicked child, civilians on the edge of hysteria. Then I saw Baker do the last thing I expected. He set down his rifle, walked to the crying boy, and gently lifted him into his arms. "Sach, easy," he murmured, rocking him like an infant. The boy struggled at first, but Baker pointed at the little flag patch the kid still clutched. "See this, little man? That's a special chevron. Means you're one brave little soldier." The sergeant's usually rough voice came out surprisingly soft. The crying eased to hiccups. The boy stared, wide-eyed, at the hard face of the man holding him. Baker even managed a small, warm smile. "That's it, kid. Good job." It was a brief human moment in the middle of hell, a hardened fighter soothing a child. It hit me hard. These people, my brothers, would do anything to shield the innocent, even if a wolf might be hiding in sheep's clothing among them. No time for sentiment. Baker handed the calmer but trembling boy to Layla, who hugged him tight. Then the sergeant snatched up his rifle again and hissed. "Movement about 40 meters southeast." The Taliban pressed again. I saw flashlight beams scything through the trees. They'd figured out we had night vision and were trying to blind us or pick our positions. They came from 2 directions at once. Our odds shrank by the second. We signed the last-ditch plan, tightened the circle, and hit hardest where they break through. I set up to cover the southeast with Baker, while Ramirez and Davis took the opposite side. The civilians clustered in the center of our makeshift redoubt. Samir finally let go of his wife, laid her gently on the ground, then sat apart, hollow-eyed, clutching his son and his elderly mother-in-law. Layla lay beside her parents and the old woman, whispering prayers under her breath. Her father held a small pistol in a shaking hand. Someone must have given it to him, likely Ramirez, just in case. A twig snapped. I whipped around. A beam punched the dark. I cut it with a short burst. The light died, and a body thudded into the brush. Enemy rifles instantly raked us from both sides. The night exploded again with gunfire. Bark shredded from trees, sparks spit from rock strikes. I fired slow and precise, picking targets. One attacker choked and fell. Another snapped back as Baker hit him square in the chest. But more pushed in. 3, then 4. Too many. A brutal punch hit my shoulder. Hot pain lanced my right side. The round deflected off my plate, numbing my arm. I gritted through it and kept shooting, cinching the rifle into my left side. Davis yelped. An enemy round knocked his helmet clean off, but his skull was spared. He staggered, stunned but alive. Ramirez dumped a mag into 2 Taliban, breaking through, reloaded fast, cursing in Spanish. One went down screaming, the other ducked away. It turned into a savage, close-quarters fight. One Taliban suddenly burst right between us, almost ran into me in the dark. Wild-eyed, he raised his rifle to fire. I could not swing in time, but a single shot cracked from behind. Layla's father fired his pistol. The fighter wobbled and collapsed at my feet, a neat hole dead center in his forehead. Credit where it's due, the old man's hand did not shake. For a breath, it seemed we had held. Bodies lay around us. A few survivors dragged their wounded back, apparently deciding we were too much to chew. "Cease fire," I shouted when no one had shot back for several long seconds. My ears rang. The air reeked of powder. None of us relaxed. Could be a ploy. We listened hard into the dark. Then the sweetest sound on earth, rotors thumping in the distance. "Helicopter," someone cheered. I checked my watch. The rescue bird, right on schedule. If we could hold a little longer, we were getting out. "Pop smoke," I ordered. Ramirez yanked the pin, and thump, a tower of orange smoke speared upward to mark us for friendlies. The rotors grew louder, and in half a minute, the dark shape of a black hawk slid over the treetops, dropping toward a clearing nearby. Its searchlight skimmed the ground, hunting for us and our bright smoke. "Thank God," Layla breathed. The Black Hawk hung over a small opening a few dozen yards away, side doors already open. The door gunner waved us in. Time to punch through. They'd cover us from above. "Move, move," I yelled, motioning the civilians. Baker and Ramirez broke from cover first, guns up, bracketing a path to the bird. The civilians bolted after them in a pack, gasping and terrified. Layla practically carried the boy. Her parents and the others sprinted. Samir paused to grab something from his wife's hands, looked like a small bundle of her things, then ran too, tears streaking his face. Davis and I covered the withdrawal, backing out last, sights on the tree line. The door gunner hammered the edge of the woods to keep any brave soul from peeking. One by one, our people were hauled or shoved into the helicopter. Layla passed the boy to the crew chief, then spun to help her mother. Her father insisted she climb first, but Layla refused, shoving him aboard instead. Samir all but shoved his elderly mother-in-law into a soldier's arms and was already lifting his son. Baker and Ramirez were inside now, laying down fire from the door. Torres, limping, made it up with help from the crew. Almost there. Just a few more steps to safety. And then, as if the devil himself timed it, a burst rattled from behind us, the enemy's last gamble. Rounds pinged off the Black Hawk's skin. The door gunner swung and answered with a ripping stream. I spun and spotted 2 Taliban charging out of the trees behind us. One was already firing into our backs. Davis screamed and crumpled on the ramp, clutching a hole in his back. Time slowed. I raised my rifle and dropped the shooter. Where was the second? My heart slammed in my throat as I searched. A figure surged up on my right. Samir, he had jumped back off the ramp. To my shock, he held a pistol, must have ripped it from the old man's belt or taken it off a soldier, and the muzzle was pointed not at the enemy, but straight at me. Samir, what are you? Tore out of me. His face twisted with fury and despair. This is because of you, Americans. This is your fault, he shouted, and I saw his finger tightening on the trigger. In that split second, everything clicked. The traitor, the spy. He had brought the enemy to us, and now, mad with grief for his wife and eager to please his handlers to the end, he meant to kill me. I yanked my rifle to bear, but too late his pistol was leveled at my chest. I could only grit my teeth and wait for the shot. A single crack. Samir jerked. A red mist burst from his chest. He blinked down at the spreading stain, the pistol slipped from his fingers, and he fell face first at my boots. Behind him stood Layla, eyes wide and wet, hands shaking around Torres's pistol. She had shot him in the back. She had saved my life. For a heartbeat, we just stared at each other, both panting. Pain lived in her eyes, and resolve. Samir wheezed on the ground, trying to speak. Layla stepped closer and whispered to him in Pashto something like, "Was it worth it?" He rasped once more and went still, eyes gone glassy. No time to process, another Taliban leaned out from behind a tree and sprayed wildfire. I yanked Layla down behind some crates while rounds hissed overhead. Before I could answer, a storm of tracers slammed the target. The helicopter's door gun tore the last attacker into rags. "Captain, get aboard now," Baker yelled from inside, covering us. I hauled Layla up and all but shoved her onto the ramp. Ramirez grabbed her in. I caught a handhold and pulled myself in just as the bird clawed skyward. I crashed onto the deck, chest heaving. The crewman slapped the door switch and the cabin sealed, shutting out the rotor hurricane. We lifted off, leaving that night's horror beneath us. For a few seconds I lay spread-eagled, shaking from the come-down. Around me, my brothers and the rescued slumped where they sat. Layla slid down by the bulkhead, clutching the boy. Both of them cried quietly, alive after hell. Her father wrapped an arm around her, held his wife with the other, and they prayed thanks and farewells tangled together. Baker was already over Davis and Torres, checking their wounds. Looked like both would make it. Ramirez met my eyes, gave a tired grin, and stuck a thumb up. We had done it. I pushed up slowly. My shoulder throbbed, but it looked like bruising and a scrape. I would live. My gaze landed on Samir's body, half on the deck, half still hanging by the ramp. In the scramble, Baker and I had dragged him inside so he would not tumble out. Now his empty eyes stared at the ceiling. A dark pool slid under him, shivering with the vibrations. It felt unreal. A man who hours earlier begged us for help, who we promised to save now dead by our hands because he betrayed us all. I crawled over and closed his eyes, one last small respect. No one else looked his way. They knew, now, what he had been. Baker's grim voice sealed it. He had gone through Samir's pockets and pulled out a small radio beacon, the kind used to send coordinates, and another cell phone. "The bastard was broadcasting our route on these," he muttered, handing them to me. I stared at the devices as a wave of anger and grief washed through me. We had known the Taliban had informants everywhere. It always felt like they were a step ahead. Men like Samir were why. Maybe it was money, or zealotry, or a death threat. We might never know. But his betrayal had killed his wife and nearly killed us all. I looked at Layla. She was watching me, unreadable. Her clothes were spattered with Samir's blood. I saw grief there, maybe for the neighbor she had thought a friend, for the boy suddenly orphaned. And I saw gratitude and relief that we were alive. I gave her the smallest nod. "Thank you," I mouthed. She closed her eyes and leaned her head back, a sad smile flickering. The helicopter banked gently, leaving the fight behind. Dawn brushed the horizon with pale violet. I slid over and sat beside Layla. The little boy, Samir's son, had cried himself out and fallen asleep in her lap. She stroked his hair without thinking, staring past me at nothing. "You saved me back there," I said quietly. She turned, tears bright again. "I did what I had to do," she said. He He doomed us all. I had no choice. I set my hand over hers. Her skin was ice cold. I will not forgive it either, I said, and she understood. We sat hand in hand for a long, silent minute. I wanted to say so much to admit how the fear of losing her had clenched my chest all night, how that terror outweighed enemy fire, but the words stuck. Instead, I squeezed her hand, and she squeezed back. She felt it all. Behind us, Baker exhaled hard and thunked his head against the wall. "Hell of a night," he muttered to no one. I gave a tired half-smile. No kidding. We were not safe, yet the flight to base was ahead, and anything could happen. But for this moment, fate gave us a breather. We had held. We were alive. We had a shot at seeing the sun. I looked out the window at it cresting the mountains, washing the harsh land in gold. Another day born from the womb of a deadly night. For those of us who survived, life would go on changed forever. Layla's head drifted onto my shoulder. She had fallen asleep sitting up, still cradling the boy. I slid an arm around her, steadying her against the vibration. Even asleep, she sought safety. Holding her and the orphan child, I made a silent promise. I would never betray their trust, nor let anyone else, if I could help it. In a world where treachery can wear a friend's face, those of us who fight have to grip what is real even tighter: loyalty, love, and hope. That night pushed us to the edge between life and death, faith and betrayal, but we did not break. And that more than bullets or blood is what made us the winners of that terrible night. Hit like and don't forget to subscribe. The next story will be even more intense. But if you are under 18, don't even think about clicking next.